You are 12 days into a solo sailing trip when the engine cuts out. The wind does the rest. You wake up beached on an island you don't recognize, which is already a problem. The trees are dense. The silence is strange. And then it isn't silent anymore. Figures emerge from the tree line holding bows, and they are not lowering them. You raise both hands. This does not help. You realize nobody knows where you are, nobody is coming, and the people 30 feet away have no interest in whether you live or die. This is North Sentinel Island. North Sentinel Island is one of the Andaman Islands sitting in the Bay of Bengal, and it is almost certainly the most well-known forbidden place on this entire list. The island is home to the Sentinelese, an indigenous tribe believed to have lived in complete isolation for over 60,000 years, without any meaningful contact with the outside world. Let that number sit for a moment. 60,000 years. The oldest known pyramid is roughly 4,500 years old. These people have been on that island for more than 13 times longer than any recorded human civilization has existed. And in that entire span of time, they have had essentially one consistent message for anyone who tried to approach. Leave. The Sentinelese have made that message extremely clear by force. Anyone who gets close to the island, whether by boat, by helicopter, or by sheer geographical misfortune, is met with arrows. Not warning shots, arrows. The Indian Navy actively patrols the waters surrounding North Sentinel Island, specifically to stop people from getting anywhere near it. And crucially, the Indian government does not prosecute any Sentinelese person for killing someone who sets foot on shore. Read that again. There is a group of people on this planet who are functionally immune to every law ever written simply because they were there first, and they have never left. That is either the most impressive or the most terrifying thing you have heard this week, but either way, it is objectively insane. The scenario from the beginning of this video was inspired by something that actually happened. In 2006, 2 fishermen whose boat drifted too close to the island while they slept were killed by the Sentinelese. The approach was completely accidental, completely unintentional. Still did not matter. In 2018, a 26-year-old American missionary named John Allen Chow made 3 separate attempts to reach the island, reportedly intending to convert the Sentinelese to Christianity. The Indian government warned him not to go. Outside authorities warned him. There is a regulation from 1956, the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Protection of Aboriginal Tribes Regulation, that legally prohibits any approach within 5 nautical miles of the island. He went anyway. On his 3rd attempt, he got close enough to make contact with the islanders. He was killed shortly after. Unfortunate, but the warnings were not subtle. The 5 nautical mile buffer exists for a reason that goes beyond cultural sensitivity. It is about disease. The Sentinelese have been so completely isolated from the rest of the world that they have developed effectively zero immunity to most modern illnesses. A common cold you are currently carrying could, without exaggeration, kill every person on that island. The buffer zone is not only about protecting you from them, it is primarily about protecting them from you, specifically from your germs, which their immune systems have absolutely no biological history of encountering. North Sentinel Island is a place where the most dangerous thing you could possibly bring is not a weapon or a fire or an agenda. It is just yourself, breathing. North Sentinel Island is also one of the only remaining windows into what uncontacted human life actually looks like. Anthropologists estimate the population is somewhere between 50 and 400 people, though no accurate count has ever been possible for obvious reasons. What little we know about them comes from brief aerial observations and a handful of documented encounters over the last century. They fish, they gather. They live in huts, they have fire, and they have made it crystal clear that they do not need or want anything from the rest of us, which honestly is kind of understandable. Right, let's go somewhere drier and a fair bit less violent, specifically somewhere that involves a lot of unexpected digging. The year is 1974. You are a farmer in Lintong County, Shanxi Province, China, and you need water. A well seems reasonable. You start digging. A few feet down, your shovel hits something solid. You dig around it. You find more. You pull up fragments of hardened terracotta, then bronze arrowheads, then more terracotta fragments. You report this to the local government because you are a responsible person. Archaeologists arrive within days, and what they slowly uncover over the following months and years is one of the largest and most extraordinary archaeological discoveries of the entire 20th century. The mausoleum complex of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China, a man who had spent the better part of his reign trying to find a potion that would let him live forever. Spoiler, he did not find it. He died drinking mercury. But the tomb he built suggests he was at least going to keep ruling from the afterlife just in case. The famous part of the site is the army, an estimated 8,000 terracotta soldiers, each one life-sized and individually crafted, buried in formation in surrounding pits, some still gripping bronze weapons after more than 2,000 years underground. That number, 8,000, is still not confirmed because the excavation that began in 1974 is still actively ongoing today. 50 years of digging and counting. Still not done. The outer boundary of the complex runs over 6.3 kilometers in circumference. It is not a tomb. It is a buried city. But the part of this location that actually earns it a place on this list is not the soldiers. It is the tomb itself, which sits at the very center of the complex and has never been opened. When archaeologists probed the surrounding soil, they found that mercury levels in the ground near the tomb exceed the normal level by more than 100 times, which matches ancient texts describing rivers of liquid mercury inside the burial chamber as a kind of immortality display. Those same texts describe a pearl-studded dome representing the night sky, a floor engraved with a complete map of the emperor's empire, and crossbow traps set to fire at anyone who enters. Given the mercury checks out, no one is particularly keen to test whether the crossbows do too. The site is listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and access is tightly controlled, but the honest reason nobody is going in is simpler than that. The technology to safely excavate it without causing catastrophic damage does not exist, so the most protected room in human history stays shut, indefinitely. And now we head somewhere cold. Now we are heading somewhere cold. Not 2,200-year-old tomb cold. Arctic cold. Specifically, we are going to Svalbard, a Norwegian archipelago sitting in the Arctic Ocean, roughly 1,300 kilometers from the North Pole. And the reason we are going there is not for the scenery or the polar bears, although both are reportedly excellent. We are going because Svalbard is home to one of the most quietly remarkable structures built in the last 50 years. It is called the Svalbard Global Seed Vault. And before I explain what it actually is, I want to quickly address what it sounds like. It sounds like something a villain builds. A fortress inside a mountain in the Arctic stocked with the biological building blocks of all known plant life on Earth. And honestly, in a film, that would be the villain's plan. In real life, it is the Norwegian government's plan, which is reassuring probably. The Seed Vault opened in 2008 as a partnership between the Norwegian government and the Crop Trust, and its purpose is straightforward. It is the world's backup drive for food. The facility stores duplicate seed samples from every known crop variety on Earth, currently over 1.3 million distinct samples from more than 6,000 plant species, so that if catastrophic events wipe out a nation's agricultural diversity, they can come here and retrieve what was lost. Disease, war, climate collapse. That is what this place is built for. Hopefully none of those things, but if any of them. The building goes roughly 130 meters into the side of a mountain and is maintained at minus 18 degrees Celsius year-round. One of the more impressive design details is that even if the refrigeration units failed completely, the surrounding permafrost would keep the seeds cold enough to survive for decades. The mountain is essentially the backup for the backup. It is also unmanned, which makes total sense. It is in the middle of the Arctic. It is designed not to need people, and there is approximately nothing nearby. You are not getting in. Nobody is shooting at you. There is just a locked vault inside a frozen mountain, and no reason for anyone to open it for you specifically. The building is designed to look like exactly what it is, an ultra-secure facility that is not interested in visitors. It is a concrete wedge protruding from the mountainside with a wedge-shaped entrance tower that glows in the Arctic dark. It looks like the beginning of a science fiction film. The Svalbard Global Seed Vault is genuinely impressive, completely inaccessible, and one of those rare places that is off limits not because of danger or law enforcement, but simply because there is no pathway for a regular person to be there. Snakes. Off the coast of Brazil, about 33 kilometers from shore, there is an island called Ilha de Queimada Grande. You may know it by the other name, which is Snake Island. It is called Snake Island because the island is full of snakes. Not a few snakes. Not a concerning number of snakes. A number of snakes that has caused the Brazilian Navy to prohibit all civilian access entirely. Estimates range between 2,000 and 4,000 golden lancehead pit vipers living on an island of roughly 43 hectares. The golden lancehead is found nowhere else on Earth. It is also responsible for the majority of snakebite deaths in South America. And specifically, the version on this island has evolved venom up to 5 times more potent than its mainland relatives, because on an island with no ground-based prey, it had to be able to kill birds fast before they flew away. Evolution is endlessly creative and frequently terrifying. How did they all get there? The answer is not mysterious. During the last ice age, this island was part of the Brazilian mainland. As sea levels rose at the end of the ice age, the land connection was severed and the snake population became isolated. No natural predators. Plenty of migratory birds passing through. The population grew. That is the actual explanation. I know it sounds like I might tell you a more elaborate story and then admit I made it up, but in this case, the straightforward version is the one that happened. The Brazilian Navy controls access. Vetted researchers from the Chico Mendes Institute for Biodiversity Conservation can visit with authorization. Civilians cannot. And if a snake kills you, the Navy is not prosecuting it. We have now seen this pattern twice. Islands where the residents have full legal impunity and the burden of consequence falls entirely on whoever was foolish enough to show up uninvited. Noted. Now, Morgan Island, South Carolina, also known as Monkey Island, for reasons that will immediately become obvious. In 1979, wildlife managers in Puerto Rico had a problem. A large colony of rhesus macaques on the island had been carrying and spreading hepatitis B, causing repeated outbreaks, and the situation was not improving. The solution they landed on, and I want you to sit with this for a second because it is one of the more spectacular decisions in the history of wildlife management, was to capture approximately 1,400 of the hepatitis-carrying monkeys and relocate them to a remote, uninhabited barrier island off the coast of South Carolina, which is now Monkey Island. The population has since grown to roughly 4,000. The island is managed by the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources and the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, and it is used for ongoing biomedical research, which is a clean and clinical way of saying that scientists observe thousands of free-ranging hepatitis-positive macaques from boats at a comfortable distance. Nobody sets foot on the island. The monkeys roam freely. They have been doing this since 1979 with no human interference and nobody on the ground to tell them otherwise. I will be honest with you. I went into this video expecting the forbidden locations to be mostly dramatic, hidden temples, military secrets, volcanic islands with venomous reptiles. And yes, all of that is here. But nothing I found was quite as strange as the fact that somewhere off the coast of South Carolina, there is an island of 4,000 monkeys running completely unsupervised for over 40 years. And the official response is basically, we check on them from the water. They seem fine. Let's head to Nevada. Specifically, a remote salt flat in the Nevada desert known as Groom Lake, which sits within a stretch of government-controlled land called the Nevada Test and Training Range. And what sits on that salt flat, surrounded by restricted airspace and a perimeter that the United States Air Force takes extremely seriously, is a facility most commonly known as Area 51. Area 51 is interesting to include on this list for a reason that has nothing to do with aliens. It is interesting because of a specific contradiction at its core. For most civilians, Area 51 is somewhere you will never get within miles of without consequences. The restricted zone extends far from the facility itself. The warning signs outside the perimeter are aggressively clear, and the security response to anyone who gets too close is swift and non-negotiable. But for somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 government employees and contractors, estimates vary because of course they do, Area 51 is just work. They commute in on classified shuttle flights from Las Vegas. They badge in, they spend the day, they go home. The single most inaccessible place on most people's lists is someone else's Tuesday. The CIA officially acknowledged the base's existence in 2013, which was a long time coming, given that the base had been the subject of speculation for roughly 60 years at that point. The name Area 51 actually comes from an old Atomic Energy Commission map grid designation for the area. Its official government names are Homey Airport and Groom Lake. The facility was originally established in the mid-1950s as a testing site for the U-2 spy plane, one of the most advanced reconnaissance aircraft ever built, capable of sustained flight at altitudes the Soviet Union initially had no ability to reach or track. A significant portion of the UFO sightings reported near the base during the 1950s and 1960s were almost certainly classified aircraft operating at altitudes civilian pilots had no frame of reference for, aircraft that, at the time, the government had every reason not to explain publicly. Since then, the facility has evolved considerably, and since the level of classification surrounding it has not meaningfully decreased, the theories have kept pace with the secrecy. Area 51 is the home for some of the most sensitive documents in the United States military and intelligence establishment, and the base continues to be used for the development and testing of classified aircraft and weapon systems. What specifically? Nobody outside the clearance chain is going to tell you, which is, honestly, the point. In 2019, a social media event called Storm Area 51 grew from a joke post into something genuinely newsworthy. The premise, that if enough people committed to running toward the facility simultaneously, security could not stop all of them, was creative in the way that ideas are creative when you have no actual information about what you are proposing to do. On the night of the event, roughly 1,500 people showed up at the perimeter. Most of them were there for the music festival that had set up in the nearby town of Rachel, Nevada. A smaller number approached the actual gates. Nobody got in. Nobody was seriously hurt. 7 people were arrested. The base continued operating throughout. The crowd outside got a story to tell. The people inside almost certainly did not notice. Area 51 is on this list not because it is the most exotic or the most dangerous entry. It is here because it is arguably the most honest one. Most of the other places on this list are off limits because of distance, biology, extreme cold, or simply a very large number of snakes. Area 51 is off limits because somebody decided the information inside it is worth protecting, and then built a very effective and well-funded infrastructure around that decision. You are not getting in. And unlike the Sentinelese, the permafrost, or 4,000 unsupervised macaques, the reason is just no. There is something worth sitting with when you look at this list as a whole. The places humanity has decided to wall off tell you a lot about what we value and what we fear. Some of these places are sealed to protect what is inside them: the seeds, the emperor's tomb, the classified records. Some are off limits to protect you from what is inside: the snakes, the mercury, the monkeys with hepatitis. And some, like North Sentinel Island, exist in a category of their own. places that have no interest in being found, that have communicated that preference through 60,000 years of uninterrupted isolation, and that the rest of the world has largely decided to respect. What I find most interesting about that last category is that the protection runs both ways. We are keeping them from us as much as we are keeping ourselves from them. That is not something you see very often. I went into researching this video expecting 5 or 6 solid entries, and maybe enough material for a clean half-hour video. What I actually found was a list that kept growing, and a set of locations left on the cutting room floor that are in some cases stranger and more compelling than the ones that made it in. There are places on this planet that most people have never heard of, and will almost certainly never visit. Not because they do not want to, but because the access is genuinely impossible, or because the thing protecting those places is not a fence or a law, but something older and more elemental than that. I have enough material for a part 2, easily. If that is something you want, let me know in the comments. A like works too. I will figure it out. Thank you genuinely for watching this. I learned more than I expected to while putting it together, and I hope something in here landed as genuinely interesting for you as it did for me when I first came across it. If you are looking for something to keep watching, the video on screen is about how people accumulated wealth at different points in history, how you got rich in ancient Rome versus the Gilded Age versus now, and it is significantly more entertaining than I just made it sound. I really do appreciate you spending time with my silly little video, and as always, trust me, bro.